So thank you very much, Linus. We have Matthias, right? And then Von Braun, and then, okay. Right.
Correct.
We have a good
yeah, thank you. A question to Linus and Ismail. I think you're absolutely right. We need more data, more research. But the question is the policy and the economic environment really conducive to such kind of evidence, to such kind of research? Do you think that the governments, I don't know, not only in Africa, but also in Africa, are really taking the evidence up and putting it into policies which make a difference? Do you feel, as a representative of a farmer organization, well supported by your governments in achieving of what you have told us? This is my question. Thank you.
So, anybody's going to answer or try?
No, I thought we were taking a few questions, but I'll answer this.
Go ahead.
Okay. I come from the school that says that evidence alone is not enough. It is much more the tactics of presenting the evidence. I think part of the fault lines are lying along this way, that we are generating evidence ourselves as researchers. Then we want to communicate that evidence directly to the policymakers and expect us to be heard fully. I think the evidence needs to go and support those that are impacted on that happening, so that they themselves can communicate their pain points to the authorities using the evidence that has been credibly generated. And if we want really to be effective in influencing policy, let's channel our evidence through multiple sources, not directly. Go to those, if it's pertaining to consumers, and if consumers are hurting, empower them to communicate that message to the policymakers, because at the end of the day, it is the constituents that vote for them that they need to listen to, not to the researchers. Perhaps if we change that game a little bit, we may actually have much more payback from the evidence that we are gathering in terms of how it influences policy.
Okay, well, now it's Von Braun, it's your turn.
Thank you, Chair. We heard from Linus Opara the interesting fact that food loss research in China has moved fast. We have heard from Lucina Kurtica about the network, and Dirk Meyer is also involved in that, on food waste and losses. We have heard from Maximo Torreo about the research agenda, and I'd like to suggest that we think hard how the research network can be scaled up, can get some phone numbers, some funding, some coordination, rather than ending with a statement, more research, and so on. So I think I would be very grateful if those which I mentioned, and Rob Watts should be also in that circle, and others here, if you could take a hard look at the draft statement, which we will place on the table this afternoon, on how to get the science community in shape and focused with applied research, considering what Matthias Mogge just said. Good research needs to be communicated well and needs to be participatory, includes the users from the beginning and so on, be transdisciplinary rather than just intellectually smart. So it's more like a statement. If you feel you need and want to respond to it, do so, but make it a working dinner is my suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think Ms. Obi, all right, and then.
Yes, so first, your presentation was brilliant. And I must hype you because you're my countryman too. But I just wanted to re-emphasize your point, which is that there is such disconnect between the quality of knowledge that's available for the development of our continent and the use of that knowledge within governmental systems. So that it goes back again to this very critical investment in reinventing governance in all of our countries. AU has set a target, Prof, of 1% of GDP for research and development expenditure. The 3 countries that come close, South Africa, I think South Africa, Kenya, and Senegal, are below that 1%, but they are at 0.08, amongst the 3 of them, something like that. The rest are not even anywhere close. The average is somewhere below 4.04. So the gap is huge. And yet we know that knowledge is at the heartbeat of what's going to accelerate the pace of closing the gap. And that's where, figuring out how your statement is not just about the declaration. It should not be just about the things that we say about the technical solutions. We need to talk about governance. In that statement, make sure that the issue of governance is huge. Leadership that produces result. Because you can't Vatican your way out of lack of development. You can't. It can't be through this gathering. It has to be that governance happens. And we must make sure we call attention to that as part of the proceedings at this event.
Thank you very much. Very good statement. Professor Dirk?
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate all the comments and also the presentation that have been shared, and I certainly, Mr. President, thank you for the suggestion. I think the whole aspect of, communication, but coordination and collaboration in terms of this networking approach, as a result of, resources being relatively scarce, it makes sense, for the research community to collaborate and coordinate their efforts, and hopefully that will indeed be one of the outcomes of our conference, here today, as a result of becoming more aware of some of the expertise and some of the contributions that have already been made. And I want to echo the point that our colleague, Professor Apara, has made, and I want to make sure it doesn't get lost, is this aspect of investment in capacity building, particularly human capacity, right? I mean, it's relatively inexpensive to support graduate students and engage them in applied and real-world types of projects, and yet it's tremendously challenging to get funding to support them on research projects at the university or institutional level. But also, as importantly, it's not just to have graduate education for the sake of graduate education, but also to be able to place those students then in research organizations, whether that's in the academic institutions, whether that's in the government ministries, or as importantly, and perhaps even more importantly, within private industry as well, because that is where a lot of product development and food processing opportunities and other things can take place that will help to draw more of this food that is perishables in large part into something where shelf life is added, and when we add shelf life through processing, we can then distribute that food in terms of the commercial system much more effectively. I mean, all one has to do is, I travel to Africa regularly, and I always go in the grocery stores, and it's been amazing over the last several years of how things have changed on the shelves. And what I observe in a number of countries is that there's a lot more locally produced and processed products on the shelves versus still the vast majority seems to be imported processed products. And I'm a food process engineer. I'm not ashamed of using the word process. You can process foods into nutritional products that are healthy to consume because the nutrients and shelf life is preserved, and I think that's a very important aspect. The question I wanted to ask is, our colleague here from Mr. Saganga, thank you so much for your comments. And there was also a point that struck me that I wanted you to maybe talk a little bit more on, that you made a point of difference between subsistence farmers and farmers that are producing for the market. I think I heard you talk about that. And I was wondering whether you could just comment on that a little bit more, because when we're thinking about farmers producing for the market, we should be thinking about that farming in that context is about agribusiness. It is about farmers trying not just to make a living and scrape by to feed their families, but it is trying to make farming a business that supports their lives, their families, helps them get out of poverty, and I want to make sure that we don't lose that context within, this in conference and where we're addressing that. Because again, the points have been made that if we produce a lot of food somewhere in the north of the country and they can't bring it into the fresh market area, that's food lost and wasted. Or if I bring it always to the market because I'm hoping that it gets sold, but it doesn't get sold for a reasonable price, it gets lost and wasted as well. And so I'm just kind of wondering whether you could comment a little bit more about that aspect in terms of farmers as business individuals, both men and women, and the opportunities and needs that they have. Thank you.
My point really was that we need to face up to the realities of what we are calling farmers at the practical level. Let me start again. I was saying that we need to face up to the realities of how we describe farmers, so that when we are making solutions or designing solutions, they need really to speak to what in real terms is there. And we have different typologies of farmers, smallholder farmers for that matter, that we have the subsistence type of farming to eat, so to speak, which is the vast majority of the smallholder farmers. And we're not necessarily saying that it's a bad idea. That is their way of life, and we have to recognize that and design solutions about food waste and loss that speaks to that reality. Then along the continuum, we have the 25% or so that are producing exclusively for the market, and their problems to do with food waste and loss may be financially and economically determined. So you need to use financial inducements and economic inducements when you're speaking to them. But when you're speaking to the other side, maybe the value proposition is not necessarily based on finance and economics. It's based on some other moral or ethical values that they may have. The moment we start designing solutions that are speaking across the wide spectrum of farmers, we then face the real possibilities of not achieving the results that we intend to achieve. And that's part, in my view, part of the problem that we are always facing. If you go to the community of science as it relates to climate change, they're always saying they're designing perfect solutions, technical solutions, but they don't seem to work. And I can hear some kind of message around here, also speaking about the same. I've attended quite a few scientific type of conferences that speak the same language, that one, they are not being heard by policymakers. Two, that some of their technical solutions are not being adopted by farmers. That to me points to generalized systems failure. One, it is the way that we are maybe approaching the problem in a generalized fashion. The other is the way that we are actually communicating the results of what we do with policymakers. And if we can pause a little bit and begin to reflect a little more in a non-scientific way about things that makes change happen, and where are your strategic points of entry, we may crack the matter.
So, I guess, Marcello, before we had, Queen?
Yes.
Okay, please.
Hi, thank you. I'm just surprised there's not more discussion about China, or maybe somebody from China being here, because they've done this incredible 40 years of transformation. There's so many lessons to be learned. When I spoke at the AGRIF 2018, at the end I said to the couple of thousand people there that you have a big choice to make. Are you going to choose the Chinese model or the American model? And everyone went, ooh. And then and I said, the good news is it's the same model. And that because it's about
Any bad news?
It's about infrastructure and research. But the Chinese, I was just in Changsha with Yun Longping, probably the most brilliant rice scientist alive, and he was having a conference about China and Africa and rice. So there's a lot of interest there, and probably a lot of room for collaboration that would impact this issue in a positive way.
Thank you. So now, Marcello.
I want to ask to Professor Sunga if in Africa it's very common to use the modified organism, genetic modified organism, and is possible or is it's not possible to use this kind of organisms, and what is the diffusion of this in your continent?
In my view, based on the work that we have done, it's something that, again, needs to be differentiated in terms of the commercial side of things tend to have bought the GMO technology very much, and also their support systems around that. Although the policy environment in Africa in general, there are not more than 4 countries in Africa that actually have agreed to have GMO products in their countries, one of which is South Africa, but the generality of them don't accept it, don't accept the production, and most of them don't also accept the importation of GMO products. But when you speak to farmers, it's outside policy. We have a position as our organization that talks about GMO as one of the technologies that is available to farmers, depending on the policy environment and depending on their circumstances, that they can use as long as the consumers are also amenable to consuming GMO-related products. So we are not necessarily prescribing that, yes, we do, or no, we don't. But we're saying, depending on your own circumstances, let it be not a silver bullet. Let it be one of the options after assessing all that needs to be assessed, including the policy environment, including also the consumer reaction, that it should be something that we need to work with. But policy, again, if you work on the basis of evidence, as we were speaking earlier on, that does evidence necessarily lead to policy change? No, it doesn't. There's much more to evidence leading to policy change than just evidence on its own. You need to have it, most definitely. But bear in mind that it on itself, it won't speak. Even if the results are saying GMOs are going to help us manage the environment, manage food security, all clear. But at the end of the day, what matters is how we are going to be communicating it in such an effective way as to change the whole policy terrain and manufacturing terrain.
Okay, if there is one very good, smart, and important question, is yours? Okay, so it's the last one then.
Yes, we in Argentina have more than 20 years of using GMOs, and it really works. We can stop a lot of losses, diseases, pests, and it works. And I hope that now with the new breeding techniques, gene editing, we don't make the same mistakes of demonizing a technology, that simpler technology about plants, about microorganisms, that can help to reduce, and it does, as I showed in the chart, where we do have GMOs, we have less losses than where we don't have. It's not the only technology, it's not a silver bullet, but it helps a lot. So I will try to enhance other countries to allow at least gene editing that is new, is the same germplasm that you can work there, and this will help a lot in other countries that don't have GMOs. That for Argentina, it's an advantage to us to have and other countries not to have, because we export products, and for us it's an advantage. So we hope that for the best of humanity we can use both technologies. So that's my remark.
Okay, so very good. We had a very good section, very participative, a lot of nice ideas, comments, questions. And President, we are basically on time, only 14 minutes late from the regular time. And I guess because we had a wonderful section and we saved some time for the President, we can all go have a coffee. Thank you very much, and the section now is over.